The Chicago Bears have a bright future? Okay, let me explain a little bit. If you were to scour the internet and look at any media outlet regarding the Chicago Bears team, it's about 90% negative, which truth be told is kind of warranted. At the end of the day, this is an offense that does not rank in the top 15 in basically every important stat. This offense averages only 20.9 points per game, which would rank them 19th best in the league. This offense only averages 325.9 yards a game, which also ranks them 19th. And when you look at the defense, it's not good either. Defensively, they allow 26.9 points per game, which ranks them 28th worst in the league. And they also allow 3.1 touchdowns per game to opponents, which ranks them at 30. Most of those stats are extremely important, and unfortunately, they don't land on the good side of things. So why do I think this Bears team actually has a bright future? Well, there's a number of reasons why I actually kind of like where the Bears team is going in terms of their direction. Sure, I know they're 2-7 and they have not beaten many good teams. And I know over the course of basically the last 5 years, this team has been damn near irrelevant. But I have a couple of positive things that I do want to say about this Bears team. For starters, it does appear that Justin Fields can be their quarterback of the future. I know he's been injured as of lately, and at times it has looked bad, but at other points this season it does look like he's been a very good quarterback. We're going to dive super deep into Justin Fields and his year so far because I think he's one of those quarterbacks that is kind of misunderstood. For starters, his head coach Matt Eberflus is not an offensive guy, so automatically he has a defensive coordinator being his head coach. And this is a Bears team that is kind of needing to be carried by their offense because their defense is very lackluster. And when you have a defensive guy who's running your plays and calling your shots, of course the offense is not going to be clicking like it should be. To go along with Matt Eberflus, you also have Luke Getsy, who's their offensive coordinator. Most of you guys probably don't know who Luke Getsy is or where he comes from, but basically just know that he's been under Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay for several years. He served various different roles, but for the most part, he was their passing game coordinator. But here's a big problem. Justin Fields is not Aaron Rodgers. Those are two quarterbacks that are on almost the complete opposite of the spectrum. Aaron Rodgers is a playmaker who likes to sit in the pocket and make amazing throws down the field. He's a machine. He's methodical with how he works. Justin Fields is not that yet. He's a guy who's a runner. He likes to make big splash plays with his feet and his playmaking ability. Fields is not really a pocket passing quarterback, and he damn sure is no Aaron Rodgers. So you have basically a second-year offensive coordinator who has no experience with rushing quarterbacks to go along with a defensive-minded head coach. That automatically sets Justin Fields back. There's also a couple other reasons why Justin Fields has been getting held back with this team. For starters, the offensive line for the Bears has been anemic these past couple years. This year, the offensive line is slightly better, but it's still not great. Another thing that hasn't really helped Justin Fields out is this receiving core. Cole Kmet is a great tight end. I think he has a bright future in the league. And ever since DJ Moore has gotten going, DJ Moore has been nice for Justin Fields. But outside of that, Darnell Mooney's alright. That's been the case over the last couple years for Justin Fields. So right now, the cards are kind of stacked up against Justin Fields right now. To summarize what I've mentioned, he doesn't have a good offensive line. His weapons are kind of mediocre. He doesn't really have a strong run game either. He also has a defensive-minded head coach and an offensive coordinator who doesn't know how he plays. But despite all that, Justin Fields is still having pretty good numbers. On the year, he has 1,200 passing yards, 11 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. With that said, though, Justin Fields has only played 6 full games. So if he had played the last 2 weeks, his numbers would probably look a lot better. So I do think that Justin Fields is the quarterback of the future for the Chicago Bears, but I do have a bit of a caveat to that. If you look at this upcoming draft class, there's a certain quarterback named Caleb Williams and another one named Drake May who are pretty damn good. And with it more than likely that this Chicago Bears team is going to have 2 top 5 picks, do you potentially go for a Drake May or a Caleb Williams if you get that number 1 pick? Well, let's kind of dive super deep into this year's draft because there's about 4 names that I think really stand out for Chicago. Before we get to that though, in case you guys are unaware, the Bears actually do hold the Carolina Panthers draft pick. And because the Panthers have been really bad this year, the Bears are going to have 2 top 5 picks. And the 4 names that really stand out for me for Chicago are, of course, Caleb Williams, Drake May, Marvin Harrison, and Joe Alt. If you guys don't know anything about this upcoming draft class, I'm sure you guys know who Caleb Williams is. Drake May is another super talented young quarterback that could potentially come in and be a star quarterback at the NFL level. Joe Alt is one of the safest offensive tackle prospects we've maybe ever seen. He comes from Notre Dame, and we all know that Notre Dame just produces offensive linemen every single year. And Marvin Harrison Jr. is probably the best receiving prospect we've ever seen. So now that that's out of the way, let's look at it. If you're Chicago, you have a need at 2 major positions on this offense: weapons and offensive linemen. But everyone's going to say, if you have that number 1 overall pick, how can you not go for Caleb Williams? At the end of the day, Williams is one of the greatest quarterback prospects maybe we've ever seen. I know due to the fact that USC has been kind of struggling lately that Caleb Williams has kind of gone down in terms of how great he actually is as a prospect, but I think that's a whole bunch of garbage. Caleb Williams is special. He's going to come into this league, and if he's put into the right situation, he's probably going to be a top 10 quarterback immediately. So if you're Chicago and you have the number 1 overall pick, how can you not take him? And truth be told, I don't know. If I had to put myself in the GM shoes and make that draft pick, I would have a tear rolling down my eye as I don't really know what I would do. Because you have a couple scenarios. Number 1, you could trade the number 1 overall pick to get a F ton of draft capital, or you could just take Caleb Williams. Or if you want to get really ballsy, you just don't take Caleb with the number 1 overall pick, which would make no sense, but you could do that, I guess. But if I was the GM as of today, I would stick with Justin Fields. I would trade out of that number 1 pick. Again, this is assuming that they somehow get the number 1 pick. And I would do everything in my power to get Marvin Harrison Jr. and Joe Alt. Those are 2 guys who are generational talents. They will immediately come into this team and be instant starters, and not just basic starters. They might be Pro Bowlers in their first year. And in my opinion, if you can surround Justin Fields with the right talent, that's a great step in the right direction. The next thing that I think this team should do is fire Matt Eberflus, fire the whole coaching staff. Because at the end of the day, I just don't think that Matt Eberflus is the right coach for this team. It's kind of one of the weirder circumstances where the team just doesn't fit the head coach, and I don't think they maximize what they can actually do with Matt Eberflus. I think Eberflus is a great coach, and I think, truth be told, if he was on a different team, he might have more success. But this is a team that desperately needs a offensive-minded guy to help steer this team's direction. I have a couple of coaches already in mind that I think would be great fits for Chicago. I think the most obvious one and probably the best one out there would be Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions. He's young, he has a great scheme, he would establish a run game. I think he'd be a nice fit for Chicago. But I also like Frank Smith, the offensive coordinator for the Miami Dolphins. He's very similar, in my opinion, to Mike McDaniels in terms of his age and kind of where he's coming from. And you put Justin Fields in a Miami Dolphins-led offense, I think that could be kind of special. The last name that I really would like for this team to also go for would be Press Taylor. He's only 35 years old, but he's been around many different teams. He is currently the Jaguars offensive coordinator, and I think you put Justin Fields in that offense as well. I think that could be something nice. Those right there are 3 young offensive coordinators that I can definitely see becoming a head coach at some point. And if I was Chicago, I would do a deep dive into looking at these different guys. So right then and there, I've kind of laid out what I would do. I would keep Justin Fields. I would draft Joe Alt and Marvin Harrison. The rest of the draft would probably just be focused on finding defensive studs. I would essentially fire most of the coaching staff and bring in a young offensive-minded head coach like the ones I laid out earlier, which would then bring us now to our free agency process. Now, based off everything I've heard, I believe they have about $56 million of effective cap space, but you do have a young quarterback in Justin Fields who right now would not warrant a huge contract, but he's going to need a big contract after he turns 25. So if you really do think this is the quarterback of your future, I think giving him a short, maybe 2-year deal where you can give him upwards of about $25 to $30 million a year, I don't think that's a bad deal at all. I know some people might scold at the idea of getting Justin Fields that big of a contract, but when you see Daniel Jones get that big of a contract, I think you almost have to match that, if not do more. I think if you're Chicago, you're hopefully not going to have to pay him that much, but at some point you got to get this guy paid if you really think he's your future. Chicago would also have to consider a possible DJ Moore extension. Currently he's on a 3-year deal, and in 2026 he's going to be an unrestricted free agent, so you might want to pay him while he's still hot and available. The next extension that you have to get done, in my opinion, is going to be Jalen Johnson. He's a very nice young corner who's going to get a nice sum of money. For the life of me, I don't understand why Chicago hasn't paid him already. I would give him a 4-year deal worth basically whatever he wants. Now, we also do have to consider that they just traded for Montez Sweat. I don't like the contract they gave him. I really don't understand why they traded a 2nd-round pick for him either, but nonetheless, I do think he's going to give a nice pass rushing element to this defensive line. But this Bears team is going to have to do a bunch of other moves to continue to build on this defense. I wouldn't go out and spend a crap ton of money out there on free agent players. If I can go out there and build a top 15 level defense with the money I do have left over, I think that's a smart move. At the end of the day, you really don't have to do too much more on this offense because you already have your quarterback. Your offensive line is a lot better with Joe Alt. You have a new weapon in Marvin Harrison to go along with DJ Moore. So maybe you can go out there and get maybe a new center or new guard, but I think for the most part, you should focus all your money on defense. I think some pieces that I would love to see potentially Chicago go after would be guys like Leonard Williams, Adoree Jackson, Jerome Baker. Zadarius Smith also does appear to be an unrestricted free agent too. I think you can get him for relatively cheap. Those are some of the more big name guys, and I think if they can get 1 or 2 of those pieces, I think that would be nice. I also do think it'd be very smart to go out there and get a veteran cornerback like a Stephon Gilmore to potentially add to this defense to mentor some young guys. I know Gilmore's like 34 years old at that point, but I do think it is worth the time. So if you're the Chicago Bears, the chips are on the table. You're going to have a ton of cap space to work with. You're going to have 2 potential top 5 picks, and more than likely you're going to have a new fresh set of coaches. And hopefully with new coaches, you also have a new mentality and a new style of play. So if you're Chicago, I definitely think that puts you in a better position then than it does now. Because right now, this team just does not have a lot of talent. Mainly on the defensive side of thing and along the offensive line, which are probably 2 of the more important positions to fill out. But like I said, with this draft class and next year's free agency class, you can really fill in this roster and give it a nice feel to it. This is a team that needs a new identity. They need a new culture. And this is a fan base that is not only extremely loyal, but they've been through some tough times as of late. And if you give them a new clash of style, play, energy, I think that would do a lot of things for this franchise. I think if you ask most Bears fans, they would say they are kind of undecided on Justin Fields. And truth be told, I don't really blame them. He hasn't really done a whole lot for your team, and it hasn't really been his fault. So if you do decide to do these moves that I've laid out, I definitely do think that puts Justin Fields in actually a very nice spot. And hey, if he sucks next year, then I guess you just wipe your hands clean of him. At the end of the day, you don't have to give him a long-term deal. You can figure that out next year. But that is everything I have for you guys in this video. If you guys do enjoy NFL content, make sure to hit the like and subscribe button, as well as share this video to all your other friends and family members. And if you are a Chicago Bears fan, hopefully you guys did take something from this video. But I love you guys. Peace.